With Asia Minor under our boot, the big question loomed. Pursue Darius deep into the continent or head south? Many of us soldiers wanted an immediate, direct confrontation. But Alexander saw an invisible but even more dangerous threat than Darius's army: the Persian fleet. It dominated the seas, could cut off the supply lines to Macedonia, and incite rebellion in Greece. He came up with a bold doctrine: defeat the fleet on land. By systematically conquering every port city from Syria to Egypt, he would render the Persian fleet a homeless and therefore useless force. It was a total gambit, combining military and economic objectives. Confident in his enormous army, Darius executed a successful strategic siege, advancing through the gates of Amanus to put his army behind us, cutting off our supply lines. He forced us back. At Issus, he massacred the 6 soldiers we had been forced to leave behind. A brutal act that roused the indignation of our entire army. Darius made a fatal mistake. He chose to engage on a narrow coastal plain which completely nullified the Persians' main advantage: superior numbers. Darius concentrated his best cavalry on the right flank, along the coast, in order to crush our left flank. Parmenian's forces were given a life-or-death mission to hold at all costs. They were the Anvil, to withstand the most terrible attacks. They held. Their stubborn and fierce defense was vital to the entire strategy. Meanwhile, Alexander, the Hammer, did not charge head-on. He moved at an angle, a strange move that drew the Persian units from the center to deal with it. That was the trap. This move created the very gap he had intended to exploit. And then he charged. A perfect turn, and the entire elite cavalry charged straight into the heart of the enemy, aiming for a single target: Darius the Great. Faced with the horror of the attack led by Alexander himself, Darius III panicked and fled the battlefield.
Do not be afraid.
The king's flight caused a chain reaction of morale collapse throughout the entire Persian army. The majority of the Persian losses occurred in this panicked pursuit. In his haste to flee, Darius left his entire family behind. But his greatest victory was not on the battlefield. Instead of treating them like slaves, he showed them great respect and kindness. The act was a masterpiece of political art, a message to the Persian nobility that submission to him would be rewarded with honor. The road to Egypt was blocked by Tyre, a proud island city that boasted walls 150 feet high and a mighty fleet. They believed themselves impregnable. Alexander's request to enter the city to make offerings to Heracles was arrogantly refused. Worse, they executed his envoys. A grave insult sealed their fate. In response, Alexander ordered one of the greatest engineering feats in history: the construction of an 800-meter-long sea road to connect the mainland with the island. Work began immediately, using stone and timber from the old mainland city of Tyre. Thousands of workers labored tirelessly. As the dike approached the city and the water deepened, the work became dangerous. We labored under a relentless rain of arrows and stones. To protect the workers, Alexander had built 2 huge siege towers, taller than the walls, mobile fortresses designed to overwhelm the defenders. From these towers, our archers could return fire, creating a zone of relative safety for the workers below. But the Tyrians were skilled sailors and engineers. They would not be defeated easily. They had prepared a brilliant and unexpected counterattack. They turned a ship into a floating bomb and waited for a day of favorable winds to launch it into our works. It crashed into the dike, setting the siege towers ablaze. Months of our labor were reduced to ashes in an instant. Their attack was perfectly coordinated. While we were still reeling, their troops landed, completing the destruction of our works. This defeat convinced Alexander of one thing: he could not take Tyre without control of the sea. He halted the siege, making a decision that changed the whole plan: to go north to assemble a powerful fleet from the newly conquered allied cities, which had previously served Persia.
This was where his coastal strategy came into play. The Phoenician cities, seeing his power, quickly fell in line. A huge fleet of over 200 warships had been assembled in an astonishingly short time. When he returned, the tide had turned. It was now the Tyrians who were besieged at sea, their greatest advantage gone. With naval superiority, the siege entered a new phase, a brutal contest of engineering and endurance. The Tyrians responded with boldness. Their divers, acting like underwater ghosts, cut our anchor ropes, leaving the siege ships adrift. But for every trick they used, Alexander had a solution. The ropes were cut, he ordered them replaced with iron chains. They responded with brutality. They threw pots of red-hot sand at us. The hot sand penetrated our armor, burning our flesh. It was a terrible weapon. But we did not retreat. Day after day, our siege engines pounded relentlessly against the walls. Finally, after 7 months, something had to give way. And then, it happened. The first breach. He did not give them a moment to compose themselves. The final attack call sounded. And as usual, he was the first to face the danger, the first to charge. The city fell in a bloody massacre. The Tyrians fought to the end. Some 8,000 were massacred in the attack. 30,000 survivors were sold into slavery. An entire people was wiped out or taken captive. But the revenge was not over. 2,000 men were crucified along the shore. It was not an act of anger, but a calculated act of state terror. A deliberate spectacle of terror, meant to be seen by every passing ship. It was a message to all other cities. This is the price of defiance. After Tyre, only one major coastal stronghold stood between us and Egypt: Gaza. Its commander, a eunuch loyal to Darius named Baites, had stockpiled provisions for a long siege. Having witnessed the fate of Tyre, his resistance was a direct challenge to Alexander's policy of deterrence. Gaza was too high. Alexander, repurposing machinery from Tyre, ordered a task even more difficult than the dike: the construction of artificial mounds as high as the city's walls. The siege was fierce. During a Gaza raid, Alexander was severely wounded in the shoulder. This only deepened his rage. When the city fell, Baites, who had fought bravely, was captured alive. But even in defeat, he refused to acknowledge Alexander or kneel before him. Infuriated by this defiance, Alexander ordered a cruel and uniquely symbolic execution. Alexander did not want to simply defeat Egypt. He wanted to conquer its heart. He entered Memphis, not as an invader, but as a savior. The Egyptian priests quickly declared him the son of Amun, the supreme god. It was no formality, it was a religious transfer of power. He achieved what no Western king had ever done before. He became the rightful pharaoh of Egypt. Egypt ceased to be a vassal state. It became a core part of his empire, and later, the center of Hellenistic civilization. It was here that Alexander envisioned his greatest dream, a city unlike any other, a place that bears his name. Alexandria was more than a port, a city, or a fortress. It symbolized the vision that connected East and West, Greece and Egypt, past and future. He laid the first brick not with the hands of a warrior, but with the mind of a nation builder. And so, at the edge of the desert, a new era began. We were no longer conquerors, we were builders. Alexander had gone further than any Greek before him, not only in distance, but in ambition and thought. But glory also carried the shadow of destiny. And destiny always exacts a price. In Egypt, he was considered a god, but no god can escape fate. As we left Egypt for the greater land, Mesopotamia, the shadow of Darius awaited on the horizon. What happened in Tyre and Gaza was only the prelude. There's an empire waiting to be overthrown. And my friend Alexander is ready.